A good vach, Shavua Tov, a Freilich and Hanukkah, a good Hodesh. We're still in the middle of celebrations. The Amida that we said tonight at the end, starting the new week, right? The evening prayer is the start of the new day. That's the longest Amida of the year, I'm pretty sure, because we have the addition for Rosh Hodesh and the addition for Hanukkah. And tonight we switched over to Tal Umater Lebracha, as we were talking about, that at a certain point in the year we begin to ask God to bless us with dew and the rain. So tonight we began that. Let's light up the darkness. Who is with us as we get together to do a great page of Talmud tonight? Any other book, I would have made this a key daf for sure. It has a very famous story in it that we're going to be encountering tonight. But we're just in a section of this volume where there's so many great, fascinating, compelling, inspiring, and even famous stories that I was on the fence about it, but I think tomorrow is going to be a key daf, and a few nights ago we had a key daf, so we can't make so many key dafs in a row, but this is a semi-key daf for sure. Who is, at a minimum, who is with us tonight? Shavua Tov, Nina and Sal, and everyone from Florence, South Carolina says Yehudit Sobel. Bill in mid-Missouri. Nancy in North Carolina, John in Sedona, Christo in Lubbock says, I had a meaningful Havdalah and Hanukkah lighting at my shul in Lubbock tonight with my rabbi and several congregants listening in the car as I head home. At our minyan tonight at Yavne, which I visited, that's not the place I always go, but it's a wonderful minyan here in Hancock Park. And Rabbi Einhorn was talking about there's a machloket, a dispute, a discussion, right? A disagreement among our sages that persists to this day. When on Shabbos Hanukkah, when Shabbos ends, do we light the Havdalah light first or the Hanukkah lights first? And some say, well, you have to finish Shabbos before you get back to Hanukkah, so you do the Havdalah candle before the Hanukkah lights. And some say, well, as soon as you light the Hanukkah lights, Shabbos is over anyway. It's the time, to light the Hanukkah lights as early as possible when it's dark. So you should do Hanukkah first. And so I think what many communities do is that in shul, in synagogue, they would light the Hanukkah lights first and then Havdalah. But at home, you should do Havdalah first and then Hanukkah. Want to learn more about that? Google that question. Where was I? Michael Hodesh Tov from Vineland, New Jersey. Patrice in Utah. Sharon in Lebanon, New Jersey. Melissa Itel Jurin. Shavua Tov from Great Neck, New York, says Melissa. And it's Melissa who is sponsoring our class tonight. So let me just do that. Beautiful dedication from Melissa in memory of my late parents, Ruth and Jack Eiteld, and my maternal aunt, Frances diamond. May their memories always be for a blessing, and in the merit of our learning today, may their neshamas, may their souls have an even greater elevation in the world of souls, and we say amen. And Melissa, may you and all your loved ones be showered in blessings. Thank you for enabling us to share more Torah with more people around the world. We are very grateful for your support, and you should be showered in blessings, and we all say amen. And if you want to join Melissa and all the other folks who are supporting Accidental Talmudists during our annual campaign, enabling us to create the program that we create, and particularly in the coming year to create the AT app, which will enable us to connect with our audience directly, please donate now at donate.accidentaltalmudist.org. Thank you, Melissa. And Caroline is with us from Raleigh, and Barry in Indianapolis, and Tom in PA, Sharon. And this morning, hallelujah, 3 Torahs. Exactly. We read from 3 Sefer Torahs today, this morning, the only time of the year that we do that. Very, except for Simchas Torah, when you read from all the Torahs, but very special today because when you open the Ark on Shabbos Hanukkah, that happens to fall on Rosh Chodesh. It doesn't always, that's for sure, but today it did. A gate opens, right? And amazing blessings can flow through, so we're still kind of in that space today. I'm the Gabbai in Armenian, so it fell to me to auction off Pesicha, opening the Ark today. And we raised a lot of money for Armenian, and that was a nice thing today. Bill says, key tractate. Just so, Bill, just so. Elizabeth in Tucson. And we said Hallel. Sharon's reminding me that's absolutely right. We said Hallel this morning. We sang it. It was great. Stephen in New Hampshire. Tom says, we did Havdalah first, then Hanukkah. Lisa's with us in Massachusetts. Okay, and over there on the YouTube side, Aoife in Florida. Gigi says Hanukkah Sameach. Welcome, everybody. Gigi, British Columbia, right? All right, it's a big daf, a special daf, an important daf, a colorful daf. Let's get into it. We're in Tractate Tainus, the 10th volume of the Talmud, generally speaking, the laws of public fasts. We are in chapter 3, discussing other kinds of circumstances besides the rains coming late, which threatens a drought, which would trigger in ancient Israel the sages to declare a public fast. But there were other calamities and dangers that would also cause them to declare a public fast. That's what this chapter is all about. Yesterday on page 21, we were learning about some of these conditions and a pestilence that might trigger that public fast. But we're also learning that the merit of certain holy people could protect a region or a community or even a neighborhood. And then sometimes, like it said that the merit of Rava was so great that when they were protected from, certain lesser calamities, as it were, when they were wondering why was this community protected, they said it must be because Rava lives here among us and he's such a saintly, righteous person. But then in a dream, it was revealed to all the people of that community that, no, this calamity doesn't rise to the level of requiring Rava's saintly merit for the protection of the community, but rather the simple or the holy deeds of simple people. And there were some examples of these very generous, kind of generous but simple deeds of simple people in whose merit a whole community was protected. And we continued talking about that. Apropos the above stories that deal with the merits of ordinary people, the Gemara relates Abba the Bloodletter. Right, so bloodletting was a sort of common practice in the ancient world, kind of pseudo-medicine. And Abba the Bloodletter would receive greetings from the yeshiva on high, the heavenly academy, every day. And Abaye would receive these greetings every Erev Shabbos, right, Friday before Shabbos. And Rava would receive greetings only once a year on Erev Yom Kippur, the afternoon before Yom Kippur began. And Abaye was distressed due to Abba the Bloodletter, as he did not understand why Abba, this, not a big Torah scholar, just kind of, a regular guy who happens to be in the business of performing bloodlettings for people, and he would receive greetings from the Heavenly Academy every week. Every day. And he, Abaye, would only receive it once a week. And why did this simple Jew get greetings more often from the Heavenly Academy than the great sage Abaye? And they said to him, you are unable to perform what he does, and therefore you do not merit the same honor. And this is not to say that Abaye was somehow lacking in righteousness. It's just that his job was to be the Rosh Yeshiva, the head of a Torah academy, and he couldn't perform the kinds of deeds, which we're going to elaborate in a moment, that Abba the Bloodletter could perform. Now, what's interesting about this story to me is, what are the greetings of, and by the way, we're at the bottom of the B side of page 21, and what are these greetings from the yeshiva on high, from the Heavenly Academy? What are these greetings? It's not explained. It's just taken as a given that, somehow they received, I don't know what it means. I do not know what it means to receive the greetings of the Heavenly Academy on a daily, weekly, or yearly basis. But it was some kind of beautiful and accepted and understood and perceived communication from heaven that came to these individuals. So the Gemara asks, and what were these righteous deeds of Abba the Bloodletter that caused him to merit these greetings from the Heavenly Academy every day? And the Gemara explains that when he would perform a matter of bloodletting, he would bring in men separately from women for reasons of modesty. And by the way, this is not some kind of practice that was limited to 2,000 years ago. I mean, if you read accounts of the 1800s, bloodletting was still a very common practice. It was understood, that if you had, eating the wrong kinds of foods or drinking too much, or you were getting, dyspeptic or whatever the kinds of conditions that they would understand to, that you would benefit from a bloodletting, I guess it would probably relax you to just, like when you give blood, it's the same thing as when you donate blood, and then you're kind of like a little bit, sapped of energy. And they thought that was a good thing for certain people in certain circumstances. So it's we don't do it anymore, but it was, relatively recent in history that they were still doing bloodletting. At any rate, Abba the Bloodletter, when he would do the bloodlettings, and people would line up, right? So people would come to Abba the Bloodletter and be a line of them. And he might just, have them all roll up their arms or wherever he was going to do the bloodletting from, and they would all be exposing skin to each other. And that's why he made certain to separate the men and women from each other for reasons of tznius, modesty. And he had a special garment that had a slit in the place of the incision where the bloodletting instrument was inserted. And when a woman came to him, he would have her dress in that garment so that he would not see her exposed, not see any of her skin that was unnecessary for him to see. And furthermore, he had a hidden place where he worked, where customers would place the coins that he would take as his fee. And in this manner, one who had money would throw it there, while one who did not have money was not embarrassed that he could not pay for the service. He was a generous doctor who just treated everybody, whether they could pay or not. And the ones who couldn't pay, no one realized that they couldn't pay. That was a great chesed on his part, a great kindness. When a Torah scholar came to Abba for bloodletting, he would take no pay for him. And after the scholar arose, Abba would give him money and say to him, go and purchase food with this money to heal yourself, as it is important to eat healthy food after a bloodletting. Right? So these poor Torah students who had no money at all, they were broke, right? He wouldn't charge them for the process, and he would even give them money. And he wouldn't embarrass them by saying, here, take charity because you look hungry. Instead, he would say, listen, take this money because it's a medical condition that requires that you eat well after you've had a bloodletting. And one day, Abaye, right, who was jealous of Abba that he would receive these daily greetings from the Heavenly Academy, one day Abaye sent a pair of sages. Abaye was the Rosh Yeshiva, so the other sages had answered to him. Abaye sent a pair of sages to investigate the extent of Abba the Bloodletter's righteousness. And Abba the Bloodletter set them down and gave them food to eat and gave them something to drink. And that night he spread out mats or rugs, bistarke, for them to sleep on. In the morning, the sages rolled up these rugs and took them, like stole them. And it was a test, of course. And they arose and went out to the market with them. And when Abba found them, the sages said to him, well, let the master appraise these rugs. How much are they worth? And he said to them, well, their value is such and such. And they said to him, well, perhaps they are worth more. And he said to them, well, this is what I paid for them. Very honest, so he knows exactly what they're worth. And they said to him, these rugs are yours. We took them from you. And so then they explained the reason for their actions, that they were sent by Abaye to try and understand the degree of, the extent of the righteousnness of this man, Abba. And so the sages said, when we took your rugs, please tell us, what did you suspect of us? Did you not think that we were pretending to be Torah scholars and then revealing ourselves as thieves who stole your rugs? Is that what you suspected? You knew that we had taken your rugs, and yet you did not say anything. So what were you thinking? And Abba said to them, well, I said to myself, certainly an unexpected opportunity must have arisen for you to go ransom prisoners, right? It's a big mitzvah that when a Jew is kidnapped, by some non-Jews who hold them for ransom, that you get them back and you raise money for that. So it must be that you had an opportunity to ransom prisoners, and so that's why you took an opportunity to ransom prisoners became available to the sages, and you required immediate funds, but you were embarrassed to say to me or to ask for the money, so instead you took the rugs. And the sages said to him, well, now that we have explained the situation, please take back your rugs. He said to them, from the moment when I realized that they were missing, I put them out of my mind. I consigned them for charity, as I thought they were being used to ransom prisoners. So as far as I'm concerned, they are already designated for that purpose, and I cannot take them back. And so you really see the degree of righteousness of Abba the Bloodletter. Rava was distressed due to the fact that Abaye received greetings from heaven every Shabbat Eve, every Friday, right? So Abaye was distressed that Abba, the Bloodletter, received greetings every day, while he only got it once a week. Rava was distressed that he only received greetings from heaven once a year, but Abaye got it once a week. Where Rava only got it on Erev Yom Kippur, as stated above. So he was distressed. So they said to Rava, be content that through your merit, you protect your entire city. That brings us back to the subject we were talking about, that the merit of certain people protects a region. Rava's merit was so great that it protected an entire city. And there's a nice note here from Rav Steinsaltz. Some commentaries point out that these words of consolation assume special significance in light of the statement elsewhere that the inhabitants of Mechoza, Rava's place of residence, were evil people who merited destruction. And it was only Rava's uncommonly righteous behavior that spared them punishment. Why didn't he receive greetings from heaven more often? Well, that's something that, heaven has worked out. It is heaven's business, as it were. New subject. The Gemara relates another story about the righteousness of common people. And here we enter a very famous story in the Talmud. Rabbi Beroka Choza was often found in the market of Beit-Lephet, and Elijah the prophet would often appear to him. Right? So just as Rava and Abaye and Abba the Bloodletter on a regular basis received heavenly greetings, and it's unexplained what that means, here we have a sage, Rabbi Beroka Choza, who would commonly have conversations with Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet. Why? Unexplained. How do these conversations go? We don't know, generally speaking, but here's one of those conversations. So once Elijah the prophet would often appear to him. Once, Rabbi Beroka said to Elijah, of all the people who come here in the marketplace, right? It's interesting that Elijah the prophet would appear to Rabbi Beroka in the marketplace. The marketplace is understood as a non-holy place, a totally secular place, a place devoid of holiness. It's just a place where people go and do business. And, where other stuff happens as well. There's prostitutes probably out there in the marketplace. So it's a place that is not a holy place at all. It's the opposite. But people have to go there to buy their food for Shabbos, etc. So here's Rabbi Beroka, and he's talking with Elijah, and he says, of all the people who come here, is there anyone in this market worthy of the world to come? Now, what they're talking about, of course, in Sanhedrin, we learn that like all Jews have a place in the world to come unless they do something very, very awful. And non-Jews have a place in the world to come unless they do something very, very awful. So it's not so uncommon to have a place in the world to come. So really what he's asking is, does anyone here have a special place in the world to come? As we've learned many times, there's many, many gradations of fates and destinies in the world to come when we return to the world of souls. So he's asking, does anyone here have a special place in the world to come? Elijah said to him, no. But in the meantime, Rabbi Beroka saw a man who was wearing black shoes, contrary to Jewish custom, and who did not place the sky blue dyed thread of ritual fringes on his garment, the tzitzis with techelis, the blue thread in this tzitzis. And Elijah said to Rabbi Beroka, actually, that man is worthy of the world to come. He has a special place in the world to come. So Rabbi Beroka ran after the man and said to him, what is your occupation? Right? Rabbi Beroka is now very curious about this man who seems to be like not even dressed properly for a Jew in that time and place. And now Elijah is telling him that man has a very special place in the world to come. So he said, what is your occupation? The man said to him, go away. Go away now, as I have no time, but come back tomorrow and we can talk. The next day, Rabbi Beroka arrived and again said to the man, what is your occupation? The man said to him, I am a prison guard, and I imprison the men separately and the women separately. And I place my bed between them so that they will not come to transgression. Now, right there, you get a whole different picture of what a prison was in that time and place compared to here. It was just like kind of general population type of place. And the prison guard, right, who, maybe has a knife or something, but maybe not, because that's not safe to have among all these prisoners. But there's men and women there. And what he does is he makes sure, like, he takes it upon himself to keep the men and women from, fornicating and creating a place of deep unholiness here in this prison, so that they will not come to transgression. And what's more, when I see a Jewish woman upon whom the Gentiles have set their eyes, I risk my life to save her. One day, there was a betrothed young woman. She was engaged, and she was among us, and upon whom the Gentiles had set their eyes. And I took dregs, durdiah, of red wine and threw them on the lower part of her dress. And I said, she is dastana, in Hebrew, Anida. She's a woman having her menses. So you don't want to go rape her, let her be. And that saved her from being raped. Rabbi Beroka said to him, what is the reason that you do not have tzitzis? And why do you wear black shoes? Why do you wear the ritual fringes? And the man said to him, well, since I come and go among the Gentiles, I dress this way so that they will not know that I am a Jew. When they issue a decree that will harm the Jews, I inform the sages and they pray for mercy and annul the decree. And Rabbi Beroka further inquired, what is the reason? And by the way, we're over on the 22a now, about halfway down. And when they issue a decree and inform the sages, Rabbi Beroka further inquired, and what is the reason that when I said to you, what is your occupation? You said to me, go away now, but come tomorrow. The man said to him, well, at that moment, they had just issued a decree. And I said to myself, first, I must go and inform the sages so that they will pray for mercy over this matter. Isn't that beautiful? And so, this is a paradigm. There are a lot of people in the world who are just unsung heroes, and maybe their heroism is never known. They just take care of people. They make it their business to protect and guard people, to make sure that calamities don't happen to people, to guard the innocent, to feed the hungry, but without making a big hoopla about it. They're hidden heroes. right? So in this case, Rabbi Beroka happened to hear about this man because a prophet, Elijah, Elijah never died. So Elijah is often sort of circulating among us and makes an appearance at important times. Like we just had another story about yesterday, all right, when he saved Nahum Ish Gamzu by whispering in Caesar's ear that the dirt in the treasure chest maybe is actually got special powers and you shouldn't kill this Jew. But normally we don't hear these stories, right? The prophet doesn't come to us all the time and tell us these hidden people. And so you should always be careful when you judge your fellow, because he might just be a hidden hero. You should be a little bit more humble when we judge people. And in the meantime, two brothers came to the marketplace. Now, here's the really famous part of this story, right? So Rabbi Beroka is learning from Elijah, that there are hidden people among us who are heroes who have a special place in the world to come. That was the longer part of the story about this prison guard who puts himself out at great risk, right, to find out when there's plots against the Jews or to keep the men and women separate in prison. The shorter part of this story is the more famous part. In the meantime, two brothers came to the marketplace. Elijah said to Rabbi Beroka, these two also have a share in the world to come, a special place. And Rabbi Beroka went over to the men and said to them, what is your occupation? They said to him, we are jesters, and we cheer up people who are depressed. Alternatively, when we see two people who have a quarrel between them, we strive to make peace. That's where the story ends. Rav Steinsaltz adds, it is said that for this behavior, one enjoys the profits of his actions in this world, and yet his reward is not diminished in the world to come. Let's remember that before we move on. These two deeds, cheering up people who are depressed, and particularly making peace between people who are angry with each other, who are feuding with each other, and especially between husbands and wives. For that, you get rewarded in this world, and your reward in the next world is not diminished in any way. In fact, it's amplified. You have a special place in the world to come. New subject. The Mishna states, for the following calamities, they sound the alarm in every place. Now we're back to this idea of what will lead the sages in ancient times to declare a public fast, and also along with that, sound the alarm, right? That they would blow the shofars. There's an alarm, there's a trouble, big trouble confronting the community. The Mishnah states, for the following calamities, they sound the alarm in every place. And the sages taught, for the following calamities, they sound the alarm in every place. For blight, a disease affecting the crops. For mildew, for locusts, for caterpillars, and a type of locust that comes in large swarms and descends upon a certain place, and for dangerous beasts. And Rabbi Kiva says, for blight and mildew, they sound the alarm over any amount. For locusts and for caterpillar, even if it's only a single wing of one of these pests was seen in all of Eretz Yisrael, they sound the alarm over them, as this is a sign that more are on the way. Right? So as the public health director, if you see this kind of stuff acting up, sound the alarm throughout Israel. And the Mishnah taught that they sound the alarm for dangerous beasts that have invaded a town. And the sages taught in a baraisa the term dangerous beasts that they said is referring to a situation when there is an abnormal outbreak of the animals in a populated area. See Leviticus 26:22. In this case, they sound the alarm over them. However, if it is not an outbreak, they do not sound the alarm over them. So the Gemara asks, what is considered an outbreak and what is not an outbreak? If a dangerous beast is seen in the city, this is an outbreak. If it is seen in the field, where beasts are usually found, this is not an outbreak. If it is seen during the day, this is an outbreak. If it is seen at night, this is not an outbreak. And the Brisa continues, if the beast saw two people and chased after them, this is an outbreak. If it hid from them, this is not an outbreak. Right? Beasts rarely attack two people, right? They will only attack a single person. So if it's attacking a single person, that's just normal behavior. But if the beast is so hungry and rabid or angry that it's going to chase two people, then there we got a situation. If the beast tore apart two people and ate one of them, this is an outbreak, as it is clear that the animal did not attack merely due to hunger. But if it attacked two people and ate both of them, this is not an outbreak, as the animal was evidently hungry and acted in accordance with its nature. If it climbed to the roof and took a baby from its cradle, this is an outbreak. This concludes the Gemara's citation of the Baraisa. Now the Gemara asks, this Baraisa is itself difficult. Initially you said that if a dangerous beast is seen in the city, that's an outbreak, which indicates that it is no different whether it is seen by day or by night. And then you said if the animal is seen during the day, that's an outbreak, but if it is seen at night, that's not an outbreak. And the Gemara resolves the difficulty. La kasha, this is not difficult, as this is what the Baraisa is saying. If it is seen in the city during the day, outbreak. If it is seen in the city at night, not an outbreak. Alternatively, if it is seen in the field, even during the day, not an outbreak. If it is spotted in the field at night, that is certainly not an outbreak. And the Gemara inquires about another apparent contradiction. The Baraisa states that if the beast saw two people and chased after them, outbreak. This indicates that if it stands but does not run away, not an outbreak. And then you said, well, if it hid from them, this is not an outbreak, from which it might be inferred that if it stands and doesn't run away, it is an outbreak. And the Gemara says, la kasha, not difficult. Here, where it is an outbreak, the beast is standing in a field near a marsh. It is natural for an animal to stand, for the beast knows that if people attempt to catch it, it can run into the marsh. But there, where it is not an outbreak, the beast is standing in a field that is not near a marsh. Since it has nowhere to run, standing demonstrates an unnatural lack of fear. And we might infer from that there's going to be a further outbreak of, angry animals in a kind of unnatural way that could harm the people. Sound the alarms. The Baraisa taught that if the beast tore apart two people and ate one of them, that's an outbreak. But if it ate both of them, this is not an outbreak. And the Gemara asks, but didn't you say that even if the animal merely chased after two people, this is an outbreak? And Rav Papa said, when that ruling of a beast that tore apart two people is taught, they're referring to an animal in a marsh. Since it is in its own habitat, it is natural for it to sort of guard its territory and attack. So that's not an outbreak. The Gemara returns to the matter of the Baraisa itself. If a wild animal climbed to the roof and took a baby from its cradle, this is an outbreak. The Gemara asks, it is obvious that this animal is acting unnaturally. Animals don't normally climb to the rooftops. Why does the Baraisa even mention this case? And Rav Papa said the Baraisa is referring to the roof of a hunter's hideout. Since this hut is in a wild area, one might have thought that it is natural for the beast to attack. Therefore, the Baraisa teaches us that this is still considered an outbreak. Why did the hunter bring his baby to the roof of his hut in the field? We're not answering that question. I just asked that question. It's not here. New subject. The Mishna taught that they sound the alarm for the sword. Another kind of calamity, danger, right? Invading armies are coming. Okay, certainly we're going to sound the alarm. We're going to pray for mercy, attempt diplomacy, prepare for war, right? But definitely we sound the alarm if there's an army approaching. The Mishnah taught that they sound the alarm for the sword. The sages taught with regard to the sword that they mentioned, it is not necessary to state that this includes a sword that is not of peace, i.e. an enemy army that has come to wage war against the Jews, but rather even in a case of a sword of peace, meaning there's an army outside. They didn't come here to make war against us. They're passing through. We sound the alarm anyway. Even in the case of a sword of peace, when an army passes through with no intention of waging war against the Jews, but is merely on its way to another place, this is enough to obligate the court to sound the alarm, as you do not have a greater example of a sword of peace than Pharaoh Necho. He passed through Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, to wage war with Nebuchadnezzar, and nevertheless, King Josiah stumbled in this matter, as it is stated. Now, this story, you can find it second book of Chronicles, chapter 35, verse 21. I just read it before the show tonight, and it's very puzzling. First of all, the stories in Chronicles are very abridged, right? In the books, often the same stories are told in the book of Kings at greater length. But here in Chronicles, very abridged. And so we have this King Josiah. He was the son of an evil king, Ammon. I think his grandfather was pretty evil as well. King Josiah was a good king, one of the last righteous kings of Judea, ancient Judea. And so even though his father and grandfather had been wicked kings who allowed idolatry to flourish in the land of Judea, Josiah was a good king, a Torah-loving, God-fearing king who reinstituted all kinds of good practices and banished idolatry, but he wasn't able to do enough to avert the harsh decrees against the people of the land. They had strayed so far from a Torah life that they had lost the merit to keep the temple in their midst, the first temple, right? So Josiah lived at the same time as the prophet Jeremiah, who was prophesying about the destruction of Solomon's temple. So this is near the end of the first temple period. But why did King Josiah himself die? It seems like he made a really poor decision with regard to the sword of peace. And the story was that this Pharaoh, this Egyptian king, was on his way to make war with the Babylonian king, Nebuchadnezzar. So, Israel's at the crossroads of all these civilizations. Pharaoh Necho was just like passing through. And so King Josiah is told, hey, there's an army here in our land. And he says, well, they have to be stopped. So Pharaoh Necho sends word to King Josiah, hey, I have no beef with you. I'm not here to make war with you. I'm on my way to make war with King Nebuchadnezzar. King Josiah says, you shall not pass through. Bad choice. But Pharaoh Necho sent ambassadors to him saying, what have I to do with you, king of Judea? I do not come against you this day, but against the house with which I am at war. And God has commanded me to make haste, forbear from meddling with God, who is with me, so that he will not destroy you. And this clearly shows that Pharaoh Necho had no intention of engaging Josiah in battle. Now, perhaps King Josiah had reason to believe that Pharaoh Necho could be lying. There are many world leaders who lie, especially in matters of war. The Gemara asks, what is the meaning of the phrase, God who is with me? And Rabbi Yehuda said that Rav said this is referring to Necho's idolatry, which he brought for assistance. He's a king of Egypt, right? So they're definitely an idolatrous people with lots of different gods. And he brought his idols with him, but he refers to God. And so the commentators are saying, well, why is Pharaoh talking about God? It could be that he's referring to his chief god, or he's saying the God that I brought with me. At any rate, Josiah said, since he trusts in servants, move me away, for I am seriously wounded. And what is the meaning of the phrase, for I am seriously wounded? Rav Yehuda said that Rav said this teaches that the Egyptian archers made his entire body like a sieve from the many arrows they shot into him. And he died on that day. Let me just adjust this. Come on. Okay. And Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani said that Rabbi Yochanan said, for what reason was Josiah punished? Because he should have consulted with the prophet Jeremiah to find out if he should go to war. But he did not consult with Jeremiah. He had an access to really good information and asked him, don't go to war against this guy. You're going to die. And he really should have consulted. He should have gotten advice before he got into such a dramatic affair, such a dangerous affair as going to war with the king of Egypt. Because he was a righteous king who was so good and important for the land. His life was not his own, right? He had responsibility. He shouldn't have done something so rash, and he paid the ultimate price. Now, why did Josiah think that he could go to war with Pharaoh? Right. What is the meaning of the phrase? I'm sorry. How did Josiah interpret the verses of the Torah? How did they lead him to go to war? He was a righteous king. Why did he think it was a good idea for him to go to war? Leviticus 26:6. Neither shall a sword go through your land. He was trying to, do the right thing. He thought that the Torah was telling him, don't let a foreign army pass through your land. And he thought it was his job to prevent Pharaoh Necho from marching through. What is the meaning of the term sword? By the way, we're a few paragraphs into the B side of page 22. What is the meaning of the term sword? If we say that it is referring to a sword that is not of peace, but isn't it written earlier in the same verse? And I will give peace in the land. Rather, the verse must mean that even a sword of peace shall not pass through the land. Earlier king, when the people's spiritual level was still high enough to merit the protection of heaven, might have, stopped an army from simply passing through the land, but the people had lost that level of merit, and so it was not given to them to be protected from this passing army, and Josiah was killed by Pharaoh Necho. The Gemara discusses Josiah's deathbed reflections. When Josiah was dying, Jeremiah saw his lips moving, and Jeremiah said, perhaps, heaven forbid, he is saying something improper and complaining about God's judgment on account of his great distress. And Jeremiah bent over and heard that he was justifying God's judgment against himself. Josiah wasn't angry at God. Josiah said, I know I brought this on myself. Josiah said, the Lord is righteous, for I have rebelled against his word. And at that moment, Jeremiah began his eulogy for Josiah. The breath of our nostrils, the anointed of the Lord, was trapped in their pits. And that concludes the story of Josiah. The Mishnah taught an incident occurred in which elders descended from Jerusalem to their cities and decreed a fast throughout the land because a small amount of blight was seen in the city of Ashkelon, enough to fill the mouth of an oven. And a dilemma was raised before the sages. Did they mean enough grain to fill an entire oven? Or perhaps they meant enough grain to prepare bread to fill an oven. This is far less, as bread is stuck to the walls of the oven and does not fill the entire volume inside of it. Right, the way they used to bake bread in those old ancient clay ovens was to take the dough and stick it to the side of the clay. They didn't fill the whole oven with dough. And the Gemara answers, come in here the phrase of the Mishnah, enough to fill the mouth of an oven. And this indicates that the bread referred to does not fill the entire oven, but rather covers the mouth of the oven. The Gemara further asks, and still you can raise this dilemma before them, is the Mishnah referring to the bread of the cover of the oven? Perhaps it is referring to a row of bread around the mouth of the oven. No resolution was found. Teku, they let the matter stand. New subject. And the Mishnah, the Mishnah of chapter 3, taught, and furthermore, they decreed a fast because wolves had eaten 2 children in Transjordan. And Ula said the name of Rabbi Shimon Yehotzadak. An incident occurred in which wolves swallowed 2 children and excreted them. And the incident came before the sages for a ruling, and they were asked if the remains were ritually impure, even after they had passed through the animal's digestive tract. And they pronounced the flesh ritually pure. It had been so transformed by, tragically, these humans were eaten by a wolf, and then their remains came out of the other end of the wolf. Now they're no longer a corpse. So that's why it's tahor. It's not capable, if you touch, the remains in that wolf poop. It's a dirty, disgusting thing, but it's not a corpse anymore, so it wouldn't transmit ritual impurity. On the other hand, the bones, which were intact, those were human bones, recognizably human bones, and those are tameh. Those, if you touch them, you would get corpse tuma and have to be purified from corpse tuma. The Mishnah, new subject, the Mishnah further taught, for the following calamities, they sound the alarm even on Shabbos. For a city that is surrounded by Gentile troops, for a place in danger of being flooded by a river that has swollen its banks, or for a ship tossed about at sea. And the sages taught, In the case of a city that is surrounded by Gentile troops, right, foreign armies, or a river that has swollen beyond its banks, and this also applies to both a ship tossed about at sea and an individual who's being pursued by foreigners or by thieves or by an evil spirit, which may lead him to harm himself. The evil spirit, somebody possessed with an evil spirit, might harm himself, right? It's like a suicidal person. Suicidal ideation is understood here to come from an evil spirit. For that, they sound the alarm, even on Shabbos, right? Because it's a matter of saving life. So, of course, you're going to blow the shofars, which you normally wouldn't do on Shabbos, but you're going to desecrate Shabbos to save a life. And in all these cases, an individual is permitted to afflict himself by fasting to annul the evil decrees against him. So it is permitted for an individual confronted with, like dangerous situations to undertake a fast in light of that. However, it's permitted, but it's not encouraged. And before you declare a fast on yourself, you should consult with your local rabbi, your local Orthodox rabbi. It's complicated law. And right here we see how there's a machloket, there's a disagreement. Rabbi Yosei says an individual is not permitted to afflict himself by fasting, lest he become too weak to work and be beholden to other beings, and those beings will not have mercy on him. Rabbi Yehuda said that Rav said, what is the reason of Rabbi Yosei? It is as is written, and man became a living soul. Genesis 2:7. And Rabbi Yosei interprets this verse as a mitzvah, as a command. The soul I placed within you, preserve and sustain it. So Rabbi Yosei reads Genesis 2:7, and man became a living soul. He reads that as, well, you who are humans have a living soul within you, preserve it. In other words, guard your health. It's not an option. According to Rabbi Yosei, it's a command. Very important. To protect your health is a command. I'm almost done, so if you have questions or comments, get them in now. The Mishna taught, Shimon the Timnite says, one may cry out on Shabbos even for pestilence, but the rabbis did not agree with him. A dilemma was raised before the sages. Does this mean that the rabbis did not agree with him with regard to crying out in these situations on Shabbos? But if they occur on a weekday, they did agree with him? Or perhaps they did not agree with him at all, as they maintain that one never cries out over pestilence. And the Gemara answers, come in here, as it is taught in a Baraisa, one cries out. Cry out to God. Beg God for mercy and for divine assistance. One cries out for a plague of pestilence on Shabbos, and needless to say, one cries out on weekdays. Rabbi Chanan bar ben Pitam, the student of Rabbi Akiva, says in the name of Rabbi Akiva, one does not cry out for pestilence at all. And this opinion, attributed to Rabbi Akiva, is the ruling of the rabbis of the Mishnah. What is the halacha, the law? An individual is permitted to afflict himself by fasting, just as the community must observe fasts and offer special prayers when threatened by calamity. So too must every individual fast when faced with some personal suffering. This is in accordance with the ruling of the Maggid Mishna. Because you're facing danger, talk to your rabbi first. Okay. What is going on with the internet? It's driving me bananas. I hope that we're still streaming. And with regard to pestilence, on Shabbos, the alarm is not sounded for a plague of pestilence. During the rest of the week, the alarm is sounded for this reason, and fasts are proclaimed. But again, these laws of fast don't really apply in the same way in modern times as they did in ancient times. Okay, go into comments and questions. Yeah, Nina's telling me that her stream kept cutting in and out. My stream was cutting in and out. I really apologize that, I don't know what that is. It's not us. We have like super robust internet in our house. Yeah, it's very active. That's why we don't want to be dependent on social media to carry our streams. We need direct contact with our audience that's not going to be throttled up and down by Facebook or YouTube or any other social media. Please donate to us during our annual campaign. Your donations are matched, and it's going to help us build the AT app in the coming year, God willing, so that we won't have to be subject to that kind of nonsense. Okay. And that's donate.accidentaltalmudist.org. Bill, I didn't mention it yesterday because I was watching while doing errands, but Elijah's presence in yesterday's story made him seem like God's secret agent. Yes, I think that is just so. Right? So it's like, that's why Elijah didn't die. So he would be this very special soul, kind of like active, somewhere in between heaven and earth, and carrying out these secret missions undercover, occasionally revealing himself, most of the time not, and taking care of people in certain situations who merit that intercession. Tom, with regard to holy jesters, so Krusty the Clown had nothing to be ashamed of. Very good. From The Simpsons, right? Krusty was Jewish, as I recall. Krusty the Clown was Jewish, so he's got a good spot in heaven. Sharon, there are a great many rabbinic tales about Elijah and many books of compilations of them. I have a few, but the book Elijah's Violin is the only title that comes to my mind now. Thank you, Sharon. Bill, it is also possible that Necho, this pharaoh, was using the general the divine, which the Egyptians also used when referring to their gods collectively. The Egyptian gods had personality, but not individuality. And that is, they tended to think of divinity as an entity in its own right upon which the gods depended. Interesting. Some of their mystics would later term it Piem Niter Ra, Piamander in Greek, which meant the mind behind Ra, and verged on monotheism. How interesting. I never knew that, I guess, about the Egyptian pantheon of gods, that they somehow derived their energy, according to Egyptian lore, from this like higher level of divinity, which wasn't monotheism, but it bordered on it. I guess there's other systems, right, of pantheistic systems where there's like a higher god above all the other ones. I mean, the Greeks were like that, right? Wasn't Zeus like much more powerful than all the other gods? I don't really know. I'm certainly no expert in Avodah Zarah. Idolatry, it is prohibited, but our sages would study it to understand, from whence evil would come at us. They had an expertise in Avodah Zarah. Bill jokes with regard to these tech problems we're having. Zuckerberg heard you're trying to be independent and doesn't take kindly to it, perhaps. But may we get off our dependence on social media as soon as possible. That's what I've got for us tonight, my holy sisters and brothers. Happy 7th night of Hanukkah. A good Chodesh. It's still Rosh Chodesh. It's a Saturday and Sunday, Rosh Chodesh, celebrating the new month of Teves, the new Hebrew month of Teves. A good Voch. Wishing you a good week as we come out of Shabbos. And with God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow night at the regular time, 6 p.m. Pacific, when it will be the 8th night of Hanukkah. And that is a very spiritual, mystically powerful night known as Zois Hanukkah, the completeness of Hanukkah. And that is a time of miracles. Miracles happen on the 8th day of Hanukkah. So if you need a miracle in your life, start praying now. And perhaps, and especially pray during the 8th night and 8th day of Hanukkah. Perhaps that'll be the day when the miracle is sent your way. All the best.